Nobara Kugisaki is not only one of the best female shonen characters I've ever read, but she's also one of the best characters I've ever read. Period. Gender aside, she's an absolutely phenomenally designed character as a whole without that. But so is every single other character in Jujutsu Kaisen, honestly. And as such, I'd like to save the whole discussion on how Mr. Akutami makes amazing characters and the many other things I'd love to talk about for Jujutsu Kaisen in a separate video. Instead, I'd like to address something that's become a fairly common comparison in the manga and Japanese animation community and my take on it. That being how Nobara is basically everything I wanted from Sakura that I never got. I'd like to preface this with a clear statement. I am not happy that Sakura felt like such a garbage character to me. At all. It angers me quite a bit, in fact. There was so much potential for her to narratively, throughout the entire series, become something amazing, and I find at least once a year I'll go on a tangent of how disappointing it was to see what happened to her. As well as most of the other Naruto characters, honestly. Kind of a running theme, now that I think about it. But that's not the focus here. On the other side of that, I also, as a creator and writer myself, know full well how difficult it must have been for Mr. Kishimoto to try and perfectly write a cast of like 50 characters at once. I understand why they all just kind of flopped. I respect him deeply, and the Naruto world is still very dear to me on a level of nostalgia and just inspiration that I don't have for many other worlds. I will be bashing Sakura as a character, but not out of some neckbeard-fueled anti-female craze or whatever. Just out of a bitter depression at the loss of potential that character had from a series that was very dear to me throughout most of my childhood. Side note, 8 Gates Genjutsu Specialist Medical Ninja Sakura would have 100% been on par with the two demigods and would have been amazing to see. I'm just saying. Now, the similarities that Jujutsu Kaisen has with Bleach and Naruto is honestly another video all its own, and I love the various nods to the two series that are sparkled throughout its entirety. But for this video, we'll focus on the obvious comparisons. Nobara is the only female in a 3-man squad led by a goofy, overpowered teacher that hides his eyes. Sound just a little bit familiar? So with that said, the obvious comparison is there. This is played on even more as Nobara is introduced. Now, let's break this down just a little bit so there's some degree of organization in this madness that I call my first random discussion video. First, abilities. As the story begins and shows off Nobara's power set, it's clear that she doesn't really have direct combat abilities. Like Sakura, whom was originally supposed to have a high skill level in Genjutsu, even if this was forgotten about within literally 10 chapters, Nobara's powers are based on a more convoluted system than her two partners. Yuji just tanks damage like a pro and beats the crap out of things, and though tactical, Megumi just summons things that then proceed to beat the crap out of things while he also helps. On the other hand, Nobara's power is more indirect. It requires planning and setup, but can also be much more lethal when done correctly. If she can't get a piece of her target, her options are much more limited, however. Not completely. She can still do things like plant her nails as mines and beat the crap out of you with a hammer if all else fails. But that's clearly shown as taxing for her and limited, not how she prefers to handle a situation at all. Now, for those that don't recall, because it's literally been more than 10 years, which is terrifying, that means I'm old, I hate it. Originally, Sakura was supposed to be a Genjutsu specialist. In Naruto, Genjutsu can effectively either be an instant win card or utterly useless, depending on how the user practices it and how the target's chakra control measures up against theirs. Sound familiar? This concept of a tactical, possibly instant or near instant win ability is amazing. It's such a fun concept and has a lot of routes that can be utilized in narrative, as seen in Naruto by Itachi, and Nobara in Jujutsu Kaisen. See the problem here? Nobara expands on this power set, begins revealing various measures that she can take to maximize her chances using this risky power, gets creative with it to use it in other ways even if it isn't quite as effective as her preferred method. She actually builds on her power set and makes you interested in what she's capable of doing with it. On the other hand, the best example of this power set in Naruto isn't even Sakura using it. She literally doesn't ever use it. Kishimoto dropped it like a sack of potatoes almost instantly. I remember being a kid and being so excited when I found out, while reading Naruto the first time, that Sakura was a mental telepathic illusion specialist chick. Because in those early chapters, the real specifics of Genjutsu and its potential weren't very clear yet. On top of that, she also had some weird inner secondary powerful spirit of anger. Genjutsu is all about the mind. I was thinking of so many potential opportunities that her inner rage Sakura spirit could be the reason her Genjutsu became so deadly. It could have been a second split personality or just all that pent-up emotion giving her extra oomph. But instead, it just became a running joke and she never used Genjutsu once. Instead, we waited for the entire series to shift into Shippuden before she finally became somewhat useful. And then, it didn't even matter at that point, as her teammates rapidly became literal demigods. But now we're getting into the power scaling nonsense of Naruto and how unnecessary it felt to me. So, back on track. Basically, from the moment that Nobara was introduced, I felt that similar sense of seeing her power and what it could do. It was familiar. It felt intriguing, like something could really come of this with high potential. That same sensation I recalled feeling after a little bit of thought from Sakura being introduced and Kakashi, I believe, saying that she was a Genjutsu specialist, an illusion specialist. Side note, voodoo and witchcraft are such an untapped potential in manga. You see it occasionally, but I'd love to see more of it and not just straw doll stuff. I can't wait to see if her powers develop later into more complex abilities related to voodoo folklore. But in any case, before I go on a tangent and focus too much on either of their power sets, just in powers alone, Nobara took the idea of an interesting, risky, one-hit KO moveset based on tactics and strategy, just like Sakura was originally going to have, and maximized it. Just took it and ran, and made it incredible to both read and watch on the anime. And by disappointing comparison, Sakura was introduced as this and then never used any of it. And it was sad, and it disappointed me a lot. Now, moving on to the next part that I find honestly quite interesting. The personalities of these two characters and how similar they actually are before Sakura kind of fell by the wayside. So let's start off with one that breaks my heart due to the just horribly lost potential, Sakura. When we're first introduced to Sakura, she's a sweet, pretty young lady with a talent for chakra control and has the normal hormonal reactions of a teenager. She has annoying moments, but that's kind of the point of a teenager, and honestly most of Naruto is full of that to varying degrees. Honestly, considering the society and the fact they're all basically just child soldiers, it's a marvel they're not all edgelords when you really think about it. As a child, before she so quickly became useless out of nowhere despite the hints at her potential I listed prior, she was, in my opinion, a very interesting example of how to make a strong female character without actually being too overbearing about it. Nobara, on the other hand, is how you make a strong female character that follows certain patterns that many women of various cultures tend to exhibit, but without making them sexist or overblown. Notice, like with many women, she does make the boys carry the things that she buys. She does like shopping, she does like being pampered and spoiled. Nobara exhibits these traits that are very, very similar to Sakura, but the delivery of these habits is totally different. The way it's delivered with Sakura makes her feel, well, weak, whiny, annoying. She wants attention from the boys, she wants to be popular, etc. The fact that she's only 13 plays a big part of that too, but it's also just a fundamental writing choice. It's not like any of them really act 13 anyway in Naruto. Sakura has a nasty temper, snaps on people easily, and is represented by that inner Sakura we see often that I was convinced for a long time was more than just comedic thoughts, even if I was really disappointed on that front. She wants to be pretty and popular, as I said, but she also wants to be strong. Sakura is a character that's founding steps in Naruto when it first came out was a desire to be both pretty and strong. That first arc was supposed to be her journey to get there, to build up her confidence. This is even touched on later when Sakura cuts her hair. That's a scene that many mock and made a meme out of it later on, but I think that's a mistake. I think that was honestly the last bit of good writing that her character really had, and if Mr. Kishimoto had used that as a narrative tool to push her forward into understanding what her own ideal of beauty and strength was, to show her own growth, and, not forget her genjutsu out the gate, it would have been an amazing moment. But instead, it's mocked because what in the moment was an emotionally, beautifully written moment between two teenagers that used to be best friends and faded over stupid reasons, a very relatable thing for many to connect to, turned out to be a moot point. It went nowhere. She had one conversation with Ino after that, and nothing else came of it aside the sloppy training arc to be a medical ninja way later on. There was so much narrative potential there if she'd have been actively using genjutsu at that point. Can you imagine if they had trained together? A genjutsu specialist with possible future access to the Yamanaka secret techniques, all based around telepathy, mind control, all kinds of stuff like that. Hybrid techniques that used both at once. A mind strong enough to resist the Yamanaka techniques themselves for even more refined chakra control. Maybe even, a few chapters just detailing Sakura's training. What if she went on missions with Izuma's squad while training with Tsunade? That could have been an amazing couple chapters. But instead, we got nothing close to that. And that's just really sad to me. It would have been the perfect emotional catalyst for that confidence and determination that her character needed so desperately to start manifesting. On the other hand, Nobara already had those traits. She doesn't whine for attention or seek out others to just fawn over. Instead, she demands their attention and their focus on her. Her first scene is of her basically dominating a sleazeball that's so-called talent-seeking for models, cornering him both verbally and physically with no hesitation at all, purely for selfish reasons. Mr. Akutami makes it incredibly obvious what he's doing with her right out the gate. That's the biggest difference. Even though there are so many similarities between the characters, writing Nobara with confidence was the missing thread that Sakura just desperately needed and never got. I think that's something that was evident to us readers, and even to Mr. Kishimoto himself, as he tried to make her arc about that. But in my opinion, he failed. It's why Sakura's fall was just so tragic to me, because what she lacked was confidence, something that made sense for a 13-year-old to lack. But instead of helping her build that confidence organically, she just became a speed bump for the two stars of the show, forgotten. In short, to me, Nobara is Sakura, or at least early Sakura, with that one piece of her personality that was missing, confidence. And this line really does say it all.
男がどうとか女がどうとか知ったこっちゃねえんだよ。てめえらだけで勝手にやってろ。私は綺麗におしゃれしてる私が大好きだ。強くあろうとする私が大好きだ。私は藤崎野原なんだよ。
As well, in my opinion, it's a direct nod to Sakura, and specifically what Mr. Kishimoto was attempting to do with her. Now, keep in mind, I've not seen Boruto. Probably won't be watching it either. To me, that chapter of my life is kinda closed. Naruto was my childhood. I watched it all the way to the end and kept reading to the end purely because I'd been with it so long. So, perhaps Sakura managed to get that lost piece of her personality and continue to grow into her own character in Boruto. I don't know. I'd love that, but I highly doubt it. To me, Nobara is everything that I wanted from Sakura. What I wanted her to become. What I was excited to see Sakura develop into. But she started that way, out the gate, the chapter she was introduced. And I think that's why so many people love her, and so many people call her a badass, because, well, one, she is. That character's amazing, and badass is a fantastic summary of her. But I think it's also because, in many ways, Jujutsu Kaisen is a love letter to Naruto and Bleach. And many of us that are watching it grew up with those series. And Nobara is just this perfect combination of what we wanted from those female characters in those series that we just never got. Now, on to the next sort of section for this. Character development. What's sad is, I think Nobara has more with her limited screen time in the manga than Sakura got her entire story. This is where the similarities I can describe kind of peter off, not because the similarities are gone, but because Sakura doesn't really ever change. Every chance she gets to change is ground into the mud by the story. Finally gets strong enough to 2v1 Kakashi with Naruto. Naruto gets a power up like 10 chapters later that makes her useless. Gets to show off her growth as a medical ninja to cure Kankuro and derive a serum against a toxin that stumps one of the greatest medical ninja of all time. I thought it would lead to a slow progression toward her roots as an intellectual and start digging into new options for her, and the fight against Sasori was one of the best fights in the entire series in my opinion. But then literally during that fight, both Kakashi and Naruto are getting random buffs from thin air. Kakashi suddenly has Kamui, which is an instant kill. Granted, right now it's not that bad as, later, when he magically can use it dozens of times in the war arc out of nowhere. And Naruto starts showing off the tailed beast powers. And this isn't a one-time thing, this is a continued pattern. Every time that Sakura gets a power-up, a chance to show off in any way throughout the show and explain even baseline power development, let alone emotional development, which happens like twice, she's shut down by the development of her peers instead. One of the best moments that could have been initiated so much better was her telling Naruto that she loved him. That could have been such an emotionally powerful moment of him seeing through her and it leading to possible narratives. Instead, she's shut down as one would expect, but nothing comes of it. She's just a damsel in distress, again, infuriatingly. On the other hand, Nobara's development has been a steady, slow burn, exposing more of her character over and over. Initially, the first major arc is spent solidifying the core of her character that the anime covers excellently in my opinion. Strong and pretty, confident, unrelenting, and determined with vices that she isn't afraid to admit at all. After this, without too many spoilers for the non-manga readers, her progression continues, showing her affection toward her squad growing without useless ties of romance that goes nowhere. Her flaws, which some I've seen call petty, which I truly hate, and may make a video only on that, just on its own, because it's such a fantastic concept of using a simple issue as a background for such a dark series. And using that seemingly simple, everyday sin while exposing the depth of that in her background. Especially in a series that focuses so much on humanity just being so flawed at its whole and how far that goes. There's so much in the series that focuses on these grandiose, horrible things that all of the main cast backgrounds are such everyday, dark, sad things. And it exposes how much those minor, tiny details add up and can completely change a person's perspective. And I love that. In any case, back to Nobara, she continues development as an actual character, not based on her abilities so much as an actual emotion, which is one of many reasons that I love Jujutsu Kaisen's world, because it explains how emotion is a direct link to power in that world. After her Black Flash, her power skyrockets. After her emotions continue to blossom, she forgives herself and others, her base power continues to increase, as does her skills. She opens up more and learns from her past and about the intimacy of humanity and the world as a whole. She lets herself get attached to people again, just openly, properly, without losing herself or dropping it as like a mask that she showed to people. Showing that it wasn't her hiding, it was not her defense mechanism, it was just how she is. That's an actual story that flows with her without breaking the core roots of her character. It's just her growing. No need for some big reveal, no I pulled a sixth sense on you. It's just natural, completely normal character development that everyday people go through. Basically, in summary, without any manga spoilers, in the short time the anime has given us thus far for Season 1, she's shown more than just strong and pretty, even though that alone made her a fantastic character on a base level, gave her an awesome foundation. And normally that's all you expect out of a Season 1 or an Arc 1 out of any story. You just want the foundation of the character. You don't expect too much more than that. But instead, it shows other sides of her, showing her jumping into training with a desire to be better and not let another friend die, showing true remorse and anger at Yuji's supposed death, relying on both Yuji and Megumi while working with them as a functional unit, just outright stomping the ideals and ideas of another woman just because she won't be swayed by talk no jutsu. There's so many small things to unpack with her, and all of them align perfectly with the foundation we were offered out the gate. So, strong and pretty may be the foundation, the initial face that we're offered for the character, but her personality rapidly shows so much more than that. It's just what we're initially introduced to, and from there Mr. Akutami continues to build off of that as a foundation. Not dump the foundation and start something new, or continuously build on the foundation and then smash it to bits every time. Simply build off her. Show that foundation and show all the little side rooms that you can connect to it. All the little things that still make her a person. That make her more than just the archetype of badass female. So, in short, I love Nobara. She's easily my favorite character of the series, and that's really difficult to say because all the characters are amazing. She's everything I wanted from Sakura that I never got, because Sakura's execution sucked, and Nobara's execution is fantastic. As always, thank you all for watching, and I hope I didn't insult anyone. If I did, I sincerely apologize. I think I explained my thoughts and opinions on the matter well enough, though. In any case, if you'd like to see more discussion videos like this, just let me know. I've been considering a few topics related to various series, and of course D&D as well. Always. If you'd like to support my work or get some sneak peeks into my videos before they release, check out my Patreon, see if any of the rewards appeal to you. I'm steadily working on my current expansion book for D&D based around blood magic and blood arts, something specifically related to my world Exardia, which is a far larger project and world sourcebook for 5e that I'm slowly chipping away at. But let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next for these discussion videos, I guess I'm gonna call them. You want some more Jujutsu Kaisen, Naruto, character comparisons, something else entirely, maybe character profiles, or how to integrate an anime world into a D&D game? Lots of possible ideas, really. They're all kind of bouncing around in my head. Let me know what you'd like to see. More than anything, I'm just happy you watched this far in. Thank you very much, and have an amazing day, everyone. Be safe, love each other, goodbye.